The other guys don't like it. Thanks a lot, Logan.
Okay, I'll give each one of you a different passage, and I'm going to give you a clue in each one as to what to look for in the passage, because we'll shorten the time that it'll take. So, Logan, turn to Philippians chapter 2. Philippians chapter 2, and you take verses 1 through 11. And I want you to ask the question, what characteristics does Paul tell us to develop in this passage? What are Christians supposed to be like, in other words?
Okay.
And see what you come up with out of that. Sam, take Philippians 2, 12 through 18. Philippians 2, 12 through 18. And what you're looking for is, what should Christians do? What actions should we take? What should we do? Manny, take Ephesians 5. Ephesians 5, 15 through 21. And yours is, what should Christians do? What does he ask us to do based on this? And Joshua, you take Revelation chapter 2. Verses 1 through 7, which is the letter to the church in Ephesus. And what should Christians do and what should Christians not do? What should they do and what should they not do? Okay? So I'll give you about 3 or 4 minutes to work on that. And then you can report to the class and we'll take a look at what you got. Remember, now, when you state these in sentences, in other words, the main headings ought to be in complete sentence form. Now, that may mean the subject sentence says all Christians should, and then you list 1, 2, 3, 4, and they're not in complete sentences because they finish out the sentence. That's okay. But and be sure you make them parallel, make them match each other, make them so that they are matching. Now yours, I gave you the 2 main headings. What you're working on really is subpoints, isn't it? Because what should you do and what should you not do? Okay? All right?
Do you want the subpoints like A and B?
Well, if you can get that far, that'll be fine.
Brother, no? You don't want me to talk about the condition of the...
Well,
not necessarily.
only to the extent that it tells us what to do and what not to do.
Okay.
Now, if you're preaching this, you put something in the introduction that tells something about the church in Ephesus, all that. So that'd be in the introduction.
Okay.
When did it start, who started it, whatever, but you're just looking for those two things.
Does it have to be 3 points or can it be 2?
Can be 2. Could be 4.
Could be 1. Could it?
Well, no. It can't be 1.
You already got 2.
Here's why it
You
can't
already
be
got
1.
2 points.
Here's why it can't be 1, because your subject sentence is the 1 point.
That's a good point, yeah.
See, every sermon has one, as we're talking about, every sentence has 1 point. That's the subject sentence. So we're talking about dividing what we say about the subject sentence. And so you don't want to say just one thing about it. You want to say at least 2, maybe 3, maybe 4. I once heard a sermon done on an acrostic sermon on Happy New Year. So the preacher had a point for Happy, Newayer. So he had that many main points in the sermon. That was a little overdone. Okay, are we nearly ready? Give you about another minute. Okay. Okay. Okay, let's take these, and if you didn't quite get done, why, you can just tell us what you've got. Let's start with Philippians 2, 1 through 11. Now, what did I ask you to look for?
3 points.
I didn't ask you to look for 3 points.
I'm just kidding. I don't know.
What are the characteristics does Paul tell us to develop?
Okay. What characteristics? Now,
Christians to be like.
all right, what are Christians to be like? Now, how did I come up with that? Why did I tell you that was what to look for?
Because that's what the context is there.
Okay, I already
Paul
studied the
started it,
passage,
yeah.
and I knew that it has a lot of stuff in there about what Christians ought to be like. So if you were preaching on that passage, obviously you'd start looking at it, and then you'd come up, well, this says a lot of stuff about what Christians ought to be like, so why don't I look for that? So I kind of short-circuited the process by giving that start with. Okay, now tell us what you got.
The Christian should be like, and then I have two.
Okay.
Screensaver one on here. To inspire the congregation to be exalted by having an attitude like Christ.
Okay.
Number 1, to be like-minded, which involves the same love, one in spirit, one in purpose, and unselfishness.
Okay.
And then
So this comes from the first part of it.
first part, yeah.
And
then,
be like-minded.
right.
And then here's how they're to be like-minded.
The second part is verse 5 through 11, which
Okay.
Have an attitude like Christ in our humility and servanthood. Point B, obedient to God.
Okay.
And point C, will be exalted to the highest place.
Okay. Okay, now, let's talk about the second. I think those are good divisions. That's kind of how the passage falls. Look at the last one you said, the third point under number 2. Now tell me if it matches the 2 above it.
No,
Why not?
it needs to be a separate point.
The 2 above it are what?
Having an attitude and being like-minded.
No, I mean the
Obedient to God.
A and B under point 2 are what?
Humility and obedient to God.
And they are things that I should do. I should be humble, I should be obedient.
Okay.
What is point C?
It's not something you'll do.
It's not something I'll do.
Right.
Exactly, you see? So, that's all right, but I'd put that in the conclusion or do something else, but don't
Okay.
set it up as point 3 when it doesn't match 1 and 2.
Okay.
You with me?
Right.
Okay, all right. You had the other one?
Yes, sir.
In Philippians 2, okay.
Okay, the theme was, what action should we take as Christians? And
This is Philippians 2:12 through 18, okay?
point 1, work out your own salvation.
Okay,
A is how, Number 1, number 2 are through fear and trembling.
Okay?
B is, today have you worked out your own salvation?
Okay?
Number 2, work in peace. A is how, and number 1 is without complaining, and number 2 is without disputing.
Okay?
And B is, have you had a good attitude today, and will you have a good attitude?
Right?
Number 3 is work to shine, and how? By becoming blameless, becoming harmless, and becoming without fault. And B is, are you seen in the community as blameless, harmless, and without fault? And if you are, then your light is shining. If you aren't, it needs to be.
Okay, now, explain to me the strategy of what you did here.
I did the explain and then the
And apply.
apply.
Okay, so point A is what it means,
Yep.
which he developed out of the passage. Point B was how are we going to make use of this? Okay, so and he got three main things we do, and then subpoints under those, which he put in A 1, 2, 3, and then he comes back under point B and says, now how are we going to use this? Okay, that works fine. All right, Annie, let's see. You had
Ephesians 5.
Ephesians 5. All right.
13 to 21.
Ephesians 5. All right. Tell us what you.
I haven't got it quite done, but
All right. Tell us how you started on it.
well, I kind of made 2 points.
Mhm.
The first point, he says, do not be unwise,
Okay.
but be wise.
You wise.
And he gives the 2 reasons how to be wise: redeeming time and but understanding the will of the Lord.
Okay.
And the second point is do not be drunk, but be filled with the Spirit. And
Okay.
he gives a whole singing, giving thanks and submitting to the Lord,
Mhm.
as to how to be filled with the Spirit.
So this is telling us how to be wise. He doesn't tell us how to be. He tells us how to be wise. And to be wise is we make the most of our opportunity. And then tell me your first point was what again?
Be not unwise,
Mhm.
but wise.
Wise.
We can be wise by redeeming the time
Okay.
and understanding the will of the Lord.
All right. Okay.
And the second point is be not drunk, but be filled with the Spirit.
Okay.
To be filled with the Spirit, he says, speaking to yourself in psalms, hymns, and
Okay.
spiritual songs, singing and making melody in your heart,
Okay.
giving thanks and submitting yourself to the fear of
Okay.
the Lord.
See, he's noticed that there are two things in here where there's contrast. Don't be wise and don't be unwise, but be wise. And then he tells us how to do that, and you've gone into those. And then he tells us don't be drunk, don't be foolish, don't get drunk, but be filled with the Spirit. And then you've developed how to do that. Okay, I think that works okay. You've got there are various ways to develop that one. You could have simply picked out 2 or 3 good things we're supposed to do, like make most of every opportunity, understand what the will of God is, speak to each other with psalms, hymns, spiritual songs, and submit to each other. See, that would have been 4 things we're supposed to do. But you divided them up in a little different way. That's okay.
I mean, I just did what the text had.
Yeah, you kind of organize it like the text is organized. That's okay. That's okay, but you don't have to do that.
Yeah.
You understand?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. Okay, Joshua, what you had the Revelation 2, the letter to the church in Ephesians. What did you do?
Well, you gave me the jump start. Well, what should Christians not do and what should
Okay, what should they do and not do?
Well,
Okay.
what should Christians not do? Leave their first love.
Okay.
And I've got a sub-point. Do not love God by simply making love a fulfillment of love for God. And secondly, they serve God legalistically.
Oh, okay.
Right? Even though they worked hard, they were patient, they did not tolerate evil, but in spite of all that, they were basically crossing the T's and dotting their I's.
Okay.
What should Christians do? not fail to do your first work, which is, subpoint, loving God passionately
Right?
and connecting with Him as you work in His service. Secondly, point B, repent, otherwise the lampstand will be removed.
All right.
And thirdly, to overcome, so that you could eat of the tree of life and eat in the midst of paradise.
Okay. So he's gone through here and looked for things for which he has commended the church and things for which he has condemned the church. And here are the things that he commended, and here's the things he condemned. And so, now how would you know to start like that? Well, you read it and you kind of see, well, how's this falling out? What does he seem to be saying to them? And here's some things that he says are good about this church. We ought to do those. Here's some things that are not so good about this church. We ought to avoid those. So that would be a way of developing a lesson. You can take another way that some people have developed these lessons out of the 7 churches of Asia, the 7 letters, is they think of it as a letter, and they say, okay, the first part is the salutation, and the second part is the commendation, the third part is the condemnation, and the fourth thing is the promise. That'd be a way of doing it. That's not how I set you up, but that would be,
That's a good way.
that'd be a way to do it, you see. Or you can say, well, let's see what he commends them for and what he does not approve them for, and see what we can learn out of that. So those would be ways of doing an expository lesson out of that passage. Okay. Now, do you have questions while we're on this point? Let's just right now ask if you have questions about your assignment for tomorrow, about the expository summary to do. Do you feel, how many of you have picked your passage yet?
I've got some ideas.
You got some ideas, okay. Well, try to get that going, and we'll have those in the morning.
For the extent,
Remember to follow the outline structure that I gave you on the one I handed you.
the extent, if we can comply to the one that you've given to us, the length should be okay, right? Because we don't have to go beyond that.
I'm not sure, I don't understand what you mean.
Longer than what you.
Yeah, longer than what
No,
you.
no, not longer than.
Okay.
That's political law.
Okay.
But it needs to have those divisions on it. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to use the same kind of headings I use. You don't have to say appeal and challenge and all that, but use that basic format for that outline.
Are we doing sermons and then the final?
Yeah, you'll do the sermons first and then the final. We will be done tomorrow with class by about 4:30. That's partly to give you time to get ready for your banquet at 6:30. It's partly to get me to the airport on time, so that I don't miss my plane. Tomorrow, leaving at 5 o'clock is not a very good day with traffic and all this stuff, and the
What do you
Denver
think
airport
of
on the weekend.
What do you think of the Denver airport?
It is
Isn't it huge?
it is the hardest airport to get around in I ever saw.
It's pretty flying into, though, isn't it? How they make look
Yeah,
like
it's
those
nice,
mountains.
but it is so far to everything.
Mhm.
So far to everything. You just go and walk and walk and walk. So I don't know it's the biggest, it's not the biggest one I've ever been in, but it involves more walking than most. So I'm trying to give myself, my flight's at 7:30 and take an hour or more to get there, and then, so it's gonna take a while to get there. So we'll be through about 4:30.
So you feel
Right.
comfortable with Will Rogers?
What's that?
You feel comfortable with Will Rogers?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right.
I love DFW.
Yeah, DFW is pretty good. Yeah,
That little SkyTrain thing you could
it's great, isn't it? Yeah,
offer.
it's pretty good. It's pretty good. Okay, I want to do one more thing on sermons before we go back to teaching classes. I want to talk a little bit about motivation. This comes from the book, page 157, if you got that handy. There's quite a bit being said today about making sermons motivational, persuasive, inspiring. We talked some about this the other day, that this is probably, there's a higher expectation of congregations today and elderships that you preach in ways that are uplifting and motivating, maybe than was the case some years ago. We talked about 4 purposes of sermons: to inform, to convince, to inspire,
Actually,
and to actuate. Okay? Now, in a sermon to inform, you don't have to do much motivating, except just motivating people to want to listen, I guess. And same with convince, but to inspire, you need to do lots of motivating. And to actuate, you need to do some motivating so people will do what you want them to do. So it's important for us to think a little bit about, how do you make a sermon motivational? What do you do to make it motivating? And I want to suggest to you, first of all, that there are certain fundamental needs that God built into all of us. And these, one writer has called, are the springs of response. These are the things that cause us to act, or that cause us to want to act, or to cause us to be impelled to act. And I've listed 10 of them here in the book. The first one is self-preservation.
what page is that, brother?
This is page 159, 158. I will do something out of self-preservation. You know, if somebody's chasing me, I'll run. If I'm in danger, you know, I will do something to try to protect myself. One of my good friends right now, I just learned after I got here, one of my fellow elders has just learned he's got kidney cancer. Well, he's going to do everything he can to protect himself. He's going to have surgery, you know, okay, everything he can to, that's self-preservation. We're motivated by self-preservation. Well, how can a preacher use self-preservation? What do we deal with that involves self-preservation?
Diet.
Say again?
Diet.
Well, okay. Certain ways to protect, to take care of the body. Is that a scriptural message?
Yes.
Take care of the body. Sure.
Savings.
Say again.
Savings.
Okay. Yeah.
Family.
You need to take care of your family. You need to do the things that will protect your money. Okay, those are all things. Ultimately, the ultimate loss of self-preservation is health. Okay. So our preaching got anything to do with that?
Yes.
Well, let's hope so. So we have lots of reasons to use self-preservation as a motivation. The Bible certainly deals with that. In the book, I've listed 4 things under self-preservation. I will prolong my life. I will fill a biological need for food or drink. I will keep myself from harm or make myself safer. I will increase my self-respect. These are all things related to self-preservation. Now, there are lots of things in the Bible about those topics. Certainly about keeping my soul from harm. Don't fear him who can do the body, but fear him that can send the soul to hell, you know. So the Bible uses these motivations for do right, because you'll go to heaven, and if you don't, you'll go to hell. I mean, that's okay. Now, there are some, there are people who say we shouldn't preach about hell anymore. And it can be overdone. I guess the most famous sermon in American history is Jonathan Edwards' sermon called Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God, in which he pictured God as the puppeteer, and he is dangling all of us over the flames of hell. And at any moment, one of the strings may burn, and we'll fall into hell, and that'll be the end, you know. And he depicts that in a very graphic way. We were talking about 1700s, okay. And so people are a little skittish of hellfire and damnation sermons, and I understand that. We don't want to preach sermons that are just, you know, condemning people to hell all the time. But the other side of that is people going to heaven and the hope for heaven. We do not preach enough about hope, brethren. We do not preach enough about hope. We have reason to give people hope, and that's self-preservation. I told you next week I'm going to be going to this Red River encampment, and my sermon is about hope, and I'm glad. That's what they assigned me. And it's a little different sermon than I usually preach. I'll tell you about it. I take the life story of a young man. I start when he's 13 years old. It's a made-up story, but it's made up out of real-life events that I've known of, but they haven't all been the life of one person. And I talk about his decision to become a Christian. Why did he do that? Because he hoped he would go to heaven. He gets married, and he makes his decision about whom to marry based on with whom can he share his hope. Is that okay? And they have a child. And that child has cancer. And they're devastated. And they lose the child. The little girl dies. In my story here. Little girl dies. And he is heartbroken. And he wonders if he can ever go to church again. Can he, you know, why did God let this happen? And the preacher says to him, but you have the hope of seeing her again. See, like David said, this child will not come to me, but I shall go to him. So even in that terrible moment, hope sustains. So I go through these life experiences like that, showing how, and you know, there's scriptures I use along the way, whatever, but it's a way of it's built on the idea of hoping for eternal life. That's utilizing self-preservation, you see, in the positive sense. So, we need to, I'm talking about all of these, then we can go back and talk about how to use them in a minute. The second one is social approval. People want to be respected by others. They want to have other people's goodwill. Is there a way to use that in a sermon? Is it right to do things because people will think well of me when I do it? Of course.
Jesus' spirit listens to actually God and man.
Yeah, exactly. Luke 2:52. So we can use social approval. This is a very simple thing would be, you know, bring your kids to church because they'll learn how to act in ways that other people are going to feel good about. You know, I mean, that's just a very obvious one, but yeah, you can use social approval as a way to say, do this because. The third one is sex. Did God make us sexual beings? God did that? God really did that? Well, yeah, I guess he did. Is sex bad? Is it wrong? Is it sinful? No. Let me draw a little picture up here on the board for all of these.
Hope it's not sexual.
Yeah.
This is an R-rated picture.
Oh.
Is that okay? That's safe enough, isn't it? All right?
That's why you don't like video images.
That's right. Okay? What does this line right here mean?
Married.
Yeah, there's a limit. To every one of these drives, there's a limit. And on this side, what?
It's good.
It's good. God gave it. He wants us to fulfill it. On this side, we're beyond the limit, and it's not good. Is that true for self-preservation? Could I carry it too far? Could I hurt somebody else in order to protect myself in a way that's bad? Of course. If I lie and steal and cheat out of self-preservation, what have I done? I've gone beyond the limit. See? Social approval. Is there a good way to receive social approval? Serving people, doing nice things for people. That's a good way to get social approval. But if I do things that are harmful and damaging and deceitful, then that's wrong. Sex. God says that sexual fulfillment is a wonderful thing in marriage. He intends it to be part of how marriages are strengthened, and so it's desirable. But it's to be done within marriage, and if I go beyond the limit, then it's fornication, lasciviousness, and stuff like that. It's beyond the limit. So we ought to preach about how God provides the way for sexual fulfillment, and that's good. But God says, let me give you a little advice. I told you yesterday, didn't I, about the governor of South Carolina? God had a little advice for him ahead of time, didn't he? Be faithful to your wife and it'll work a lot better. And he got involved with a woman in Argentina. Can you imagine? A woman in Argentina. Then he'd get on the plane and go down and see this woman in Argentina. Terrible. Well, you know, his picture's on the front page of USA Today saying, I was wrong. Look at what he's going through.
Backstabbing.
God had some advice for him if you just listen.
Yeah.
See, we ought to be giving that advice. We ought to be giving God's advice to people about how to fulfill this drive and how not to fulfill it. I mean, that's part of our job as preachers because the Bible's full of it.
Today he was on the internet revealing any emails or any letters between him and the girl.
Yeah. Yeah. I wonder how they got those. They got some emails to her. I don't know how they got them, but they got them. But the lesson from that is, if you're going to be unfaithful, don't put it in an email, okay? No, I forgot I said that. Scratch that off.
Well, you also taught us how to sleep during sermons.
Yeah, okay. Okay, number 4 is possessions. Is it wrong to have possessions? Is it wrong to want possessions? Is it wrong to want to have things? Well, no. I mean, we couldn't live. I mean, the world couldn't function if nobody cared whether he had anything or not. None of us would ever have been born. The whole civilization would have ended a long time ago if nobody had a desire to have anything. God gave us that. But there are limits. You're not supposed to steal or cheat or lie in order to get it. Or run over people or mistreat people in order to get it. Or get more than you need. Or not use well what you've got. I mean, there are all kinds of things in the Bible about how to use your possessions. But I can preach and teach people how to use their possessions, and the Bible has a lot to say about that, and Jesus had a lot to say about that. So, the greatest possession is what?
Eternal life in Jesus.
Eternal life. See? You want something that's real. What did we talk about? We talked about the other day.
Positive.
Looking at one of these passages that we studied. Don't lay up your treasures on earth, but lay up treasures in heaven. See, we've got a lot to say to people about how to utilize, how to make the best use of the desire for possessions. Bodily exercise profits for little, godliness is profitable for all things. Pleasure. Something will give me physical comfort or enjoyment or mental enjoyment or help me avoid pain. Is it wrong to enjoy things? Is it wrong to enjoy nature? Enjoy beautiful sunset, beautiful trees, beautiful gardens? Wrong to enjoy wholesome entertainment? No. Is it, so we can tell people Christianity has a lot to say about how to find things you enjoy. And of course, the greatest enjoyment in life, really comes from serving other people. I mean, even people who aren't Christians have realized that you get more joy out of helping other people, doing things for your children, doing things for your spouse.
And my children walk in the Lord.
That's right, exactly. And so we can teach people how the best way to fulfill these things. See, so we've got a lot to say about how to have a good time in life, and that involves doing some of the things that other people think are good. Hiking and camping and going to ball games and all those things are fine, done in the right way and kept in proportion. But the greatest pleasure we have in life comes from understanding what God wants us to do and serving Him and living His way. That's the greatest pleasure, and helping other people do it. Power. Well, there's nothing wrong in wanting to be self-sufficient, in having a position of leadership, learning to do things that other people haven't learned yet to do. So it's fine to power is something God has given us as a motivator, as a drive, and used in the right way, can be very good. But we have to teach people how to use it. Affections. God has built us so that we want to love and be loved. God didn't. There are not many people in this world that are built to be hermits. The vast majority of people want to love and be loved. And we, as Christian ministers, can help people how to do that. The church feels that need. We can give love to people who need it. Church ought to be a place where people receive acceptance and feel a sense of belonging. You ought to work to make your church like that. Convictions. There is built into us a desire to have convictions and to live by them. Governor Sanford did not live by his convictions, and he is suffering a terrible penalty for it. He knew it was wrong. He knew he shouldn't do it. He did it anyway. And now he is going through terrible suffering because he didn't live up to his convictions. There's something, God built something into us that says, have some convictions and live by them. Now, He doesn't automatically put those convictions in us. We have to be taught what's right and wrong from the Scriptures. But there is a desire in everybody to have some kind of convictions and live by it. And so we need to help people to know how to use that and use it well and use it properly. Exploration. We enjoy doing something new and fresh. Had a little fun last night after Bible class. This fellow came up to me that I had known before, and I said, "What are you doing this summer?" And he says, "I'm taking people on mountain climbing expeditions." I said, "Fine, where you been?" He said, "I just climbed Quandary Peak." That's a 14,300-foot mountain here in Colorado. I said, "I climbed it 15 years ago." When I was 65, I climbed Quandary Peak.
You did?
Yeah, with several in my family. We don't want to try it today. 15 years has taken its toll, but anyway, that was kind of fun that we had shared that experience of climbing that 14,000-foot mountain. I want to tell you that the air is really thin up there, boys. It's hard to get a breath. But anyway, there's something about exploration. Well, there's also developing an expository sermon is exploration. It's fun, okay? There's lots of ways in which we can fill our desire for exploration. Going new places to preach, going to places on mission work, all kinds of, I mean, there's a thrill to this, and we need to help people to see that great thrill in exploring things for the Lord. And finally is respect and worship. God has built into human beings the innate desire to look to a higher power. We look at every civilization. The American Indians, the Mayans, the Greeks, the Romans, the Egyptians. Just came back from Egypt. It's amazing what they did as ways to try to respect their gods of Egypt. The marvelous things they've built and all. There's just, God has built inside of all of us that desire to respect and worship a higher power. And there's some who deny that. There's some who try to avoid it. But they often have things in their lives that they've used as replacement for that. So we want to say it. We want people to know we've got something that's going to help you fulfill that desire, to have something to respect and to worship. Now, how do we use all these? How do we connect with these? Okay, let's say that you're trying to get people to give to a missions contribution. Let's go back through these, and you tell me a sentence. I want you to tell me a sentence that you could say in the sermon that would connect this drive with giving to a missions contribution. And I'm just going to go around and ask you now. Self-preservation. How could you connect self-preservation to giving to a missions contribution?
When you realize how much you've helped someone else, it will help you feel better about yourself.
Okay, self-respect. The most obvious one is if you don't do it, you'll go to hell. Probably we shouldn't put it in those terms. But we can say it's going to help you gain self-respect. It's going to help you to be more likely to go to heaven. I mean, so yeah, we can connect that. Manny, how about social approval? How would you connect social approval and giving to a missions contribution?
He's talking about giving recognition.
Oh, okay. You'll be doing it along with everybody else? We're all doing this together? Okay, yeah, okay. Can you connect sex with that?
Probably not.
You don't think so?
I don't think so. I could try, but I really don't think you want me to.
Well, let's try. Now, let me add that the sexual drive is more than just having a sexual experience. It may mean enjoying people of the opposite sex in a non-sexual kind of way, or it may mean that that you are enjoying some kind of social relationship with people of the opposite. So let's don't limit it to having sex with somebody. Okay.
Commitment maybe. Or...
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Your wife is going to feel good about you if you show the leadership and giving to this missions thing. Okay. See. So broaden this one a little bit because it works okay. You had an idea.
I was going to say, if it was something to do with orphans in the missions, it
Oh,
would
okay.
definitely be sexual.
Okay.
Because then you could be like, you think about
Then
how
you
your
compare.
children
Sure.
would feel if
Okay.
you adult them. And stuff.
Okay. possessions. Now, how are you going to convince me that giving up my possessions is going to satisfy my desire for possessions? Can you do that?
You will help preserve someone eternally.
Oh, okay, sure. You're going to give somebody the greatest possession. Exactly. And you're going to help your own greatest possession. Yeah, sure. You see, that's the conflict I've got is that the elders come to me and say, well, we want you to give this contribution. And I say, well, I don't want to give up my money. I'm making all this up. I don't give up my money. And they say, oh, but wait a minute. Look what you're going to get in return. See, what's the Lord promised you? If you sow generously, you'll reap generously. Now, that doesn't always mean more money. A lot of guys on TV, say, well, if you give $1, you're going to get $2 back. I'm here to tell you that doesn't work because I have a whole lot less money now than I once did. Stock market killed me. And I'm stretching to get enough money to retire on. One reason I'm still working full time at 79 years old is because I lost all my money in the stock market. But I've got other things. See, He's blessed me in other ways. I've got good health. See? So, it's not always just money for money. But God will take care of us. We got to believe that. And I think He has done things in my life that have kept me going in ways that hopefully I can still be serving people in ways that I might not if I'd had lots of money and retired early. See? So, God works in mysterious ways, His wonders to perform. Okay, power, pleasure. We're back to pleasure. How am I going to get pleasure out of giving to a missions contribution?
Imagine how great you'll feel.
Yeah.
When you see the photograph of your shirt being worn by someone that's
okay, very good. I'm going to get pleasure out of a letter from somebody that received what from the contribution. For example, we had a thing a while back where you bring a box full of goodies and it's going to be sent out to somebody, and you can put a letter in there, and maybe they'll write you a letter, and so maybe you hear from somebody in Africa or whatever. So yeah, there are ways that I will get pleasure out of giving. Power.
Kind of influence we have.
Yeah, I'm able to exert a positive influence on other people. Maybe bring them to the Lord by giving to this contribution. Affections.
Maybe when you're leaving this place, you're picturing all these kids running up to you, telling you goodbye and hugging you.
Yeah, okay.
Please come back.
Yeah, okay, good. There are people who are going to care for you because of what you give. Good, all right. Convictions.
Helps to do your duty and
well, this fits pretty well, doesn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. Do I have a conviction that I ought to help people? Well, sure. Do I have a conviction that God has given to me and I need to give to others? Of course.
So you're saying subtly just kind of introduce these into your...
That's right, exactly. We're being a little obvious about them here.
Yeah.
You can be a little more subtle.
Yeah.
But the point is, if I were preaching a sermon to try to get people to do something, I'd get out this list and I'd look at it and I'd say, which of these, I probably wouldn't try to use them all, okay. We're just kind of doing an exercise here. But I'd say, which ones are most likely to strike fire? And those are the ones I'd work on. And I'd work on them in several ways we're going to talk about in a minute. But I'd decide which ones are going to help me, are going to have the most kick, the most power. Exploration. Go where no one has ever been before. Star Wars.
This area that's going to be affected has never got to see the Bible before.
Okay, good. We're plowing new ground. Okay, good. All right. Respect and worship. Shouldn't be too hard.
The kind of relationship we have with the people we're being involved, and also in fulfilling the Great Commission.
Of course. It's going to make God happy. Okay? God wants you to do this. Okay, well, you see how all of these can be connected with something as a drive, as an impetus, as something that impels people to do it. Now, how do you present that information? Do you just come out and say,
Here's the pleasure.
you want possessions and this will give you more of them? Well, probably not. That's a little brazen, not very subtle, not very artistic.
A lot of these will come in illustrations, won't they?
That's exactly the point. You tell a story.
Yeah.
You tell a story. You tell a story about that we're supporting somebody who has gone to Kenya, and here's what has happened to in Kenya as they have brought more people to Christ, and God has been glorified. Well, that's my desire for respect and worship, because I've helped more people to glorify God. And you tell a story that makes people come to that conclusion. Or you tell about somebody who has given, maybe who was kind of on the outer ring of things at church. They just never felt like they belonged, but they got involved in a missions work, and how this missions contribution in the past has helped them and drawn them to the center of Christian activity. And so, tell about if you can work a child into the story, that's always good. People are suckers for children. If you get a child involved, you're going to win. Our children at Memorial Road have raised, I don't know, $1,500 in their little preschool classes to send Bibles to somewhere, That's a pretty good story to tell, and there, if they can do that, surely we can do what we're trying to do. So things that involve children are good ways of making the connection. See, we're talking about, we've said there is a connection. Now, how do you show people there's a connection? Well, if you can put it in story form, that's the best way to do it. And then you can maybe you tell something from your own life that has been moving and touching that connects this. Or we're back to visualize. Maybe you say to the person, I want you to visualize what's going to happen from this money you're about to give. It's going to make this possible and that possible and something else possible. So these are, so you think about what are the connecting points with these drives. And then you ask, how can I make that, how can I help people to see that connection in the most powerful way? So that's fundamentally how you motivate. And as we said yesterday, a positive case is a wonderful story, wonderful way to present it, and it will have the greatest impact. So you want teenagers to make a commitment to a moral life. Okay. Well, they're being told all the time that the way to fulfill these drives is to go out and be immoral, go out and have sex, go out and if you want to be approved socially, you got to get involved with that. You got to drink. You got to show them that there's a better way to fulfill those drives than that. See, there's a better way than that. And sometimes you do that with negative cases. Sometimes you do it with positive cases. But you show them that the Lord's way is the best way to receive what you want to receive in possessions or affections or social approval or whatever it is. Okay. Anybody got questions on it? This is kind of how should you use emotions in a sermon? Is emotion a good thing in a sermon?
Yeah.
Well, sure, up to a point. I mean, you can go too far with it and kind of get people to do things because the emotions have been carried so far that it short circuits good reasoning, and they do things that the next day they say, I don't know why I did that, I'm sorry I did that. You don't ever want to carry it that far. But making people feel something is okay. That's good to do, yes.
What about using deep emotions in every sermon you preach? Kind of like just breaking into tears every single time.
Carry some tissue.
You have to be, we're back to our word balance, okay?
Yeah.
You have to use some balance here. Every issue doesn't lend itself to this. And people would get pretty worn out if you worked them that way every time you preached. So I think you want to, doesn't mean you can't use emotion and stir some feelings.
No,
but
I'm asking every
not too
single
far,
time.
every time. But, you know, what is the place of emotion in preaching? Aristotle said there are three kinds of proof. Remember we talked the other day about Aristotle, 4th century BC. He said there are three ways to prove things. There's what he called logical appeal. Logical appeal. That is, these are the reasons why you ought to do it. You ought to do it because there are good reasons to do that. Logical appeal. Emotional appeal. And what he called ethical appeal, which is we don't have a word that means quite what he said. What he meant by that was the appeal of the personality. You like the person who asked you to do it, and you do it because he asked you to. You do it because you honor him, you respect him, you think he deserves to be followed as a leader, and you do it because of the Greek word ethos, which means character. You follow him because of the character of the person who asks you. So we don't have a word that quite means, one word that means quite that. So you do things because of the emotional appeal. That means I do it because it has touched me in some way. Over one of these 10 things we've talked about. That's where you get emotion, is off one of these 10. I feel strongly about things that affect my self-preservation, you know. I feel strongly that affect my possessions. I feel strongly about social approval. I mean, these are things that you can get people to feel strongly about. So, the degree to which you want to stir that is an important question. You can talk about it in a way that they see the connection but they don't feel anything, or you can talk about it in a way in which they really feel some emotion about it. And both are okay. You have to kind of decide how far do you want to take it, and how far are you equipped to take it, and what will the stories you've got bring to people's minds and eyes, and how will it affect you when you tell it, and all kinds of factors weigh into this. But there is a place for emotion. I mean, Jesus wept, you know. Let's don't belittle emotion. There's a place for it. So I think we, in Acts 20, when Paul gave his farewell sermon, they cried. That's okay. Now, anything else on emotion before we go back to our thing about Bible classes?
Just got one more thing.
Okay.
You throughout the class, you've done some things that I've been kind of looking at my own personal visualization of what you do, and I've been typing them out as Stafford starting phrases.
Okay. Right.
And I think that's what really, and I think this is a visualization, but you say, and I'm just going to list them, I want you to visualize.
Mm-hmm.
Just imagine, you listen to that one.
Mm-hmm.
What is the place of?
Mm-hmm.
What I mean by that is, we're going to do this because, let's follow this point because, this has touched me in this way because, I feel strongly. So what you need to do is, you have to decide, how will this affect you? I think we should remember this particular passage, and 3 things that I think you should do. And I just think that is what really challenges the.
Well, okay.
Because you can start off saying something and they're already done.
Yeah.
I think. And,
well, I appreciate that. I think that's an interesting comment. That all relates to motivation too, doesn't it?
It does, yeah.
You say things and you try to include people together, and we're working together in this, and we're all, so it's not a matter of commanding and all this kind of stuff.
But if I just started off and said, Acts chapter 8 says that it's not going to have the effect that those
That's right.
starting words.
Yeah. Okay, that's an interesting point. Those are, you may want to think of those as kind of transitional phrases, how to lead into something, is interesting.
I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah, okay, good, all right. All right, let's go back to our chart we had on the board a while ago. There's one thing I left off of it, I realized after we got through it. There's a word that needs to be on there, so add it to your chart. This should say adaptation and motivation. Adaptation, and I didn't spell it all out, but adaptation and motivation. That is, as we've just been talking, in the instructional system, there needs to be some way in which you're motivating students to do what you want them to do. Sometimes that motivation is external, sometimes it's internal. External means you get a gold star on the board, okay? That's external motivation. Internal motivation is God will be pleased if you do this, so that's internal motivation. So you want to work on thinking as a teacher or as a designer of a learning system, where is the motivation? Now, I want us to look at this chart again. And it goes through, so we first presented kind of the whole picture, okay? And now I want us to go back through and talk about some elements of this in greater detail. You've got the picture in mind, the whole system, how the system works. And be sure you add the arrows down here. See, I didn't draw these on the board, but there are arrows from entering behavior down to systems evaluation, from learning paths to systems evaluation, terminal behavior to systems evaluation, and adaptation arrows that go back up this way, because we're going to improve the system as we go along. Now let's go through and talk about these a little bit. Let's practice writing some objectives for a minute. Let's practice writing some objectives. Let's suppose that you're teaching a high school class, and you want to teach a lesson about honesty. What objective what would describe the terminal behavior that you're seeking? How would you say, here's what I'm hoping the students will do when this lesson on honesty is over? What terminal behavior are you striving for?
Then apply all those encouragement or knowledge you provide them with, so that they could be honest.
Yes, but how would you describe the behavior that you want to be the result of what you've taught? All of you write something down. Try to write down a terminal behavior that would describe what you hope would be the outcome of a class for high school students on honesty. And I'll start with the student will, or the student can, or the student, not the student should, but the student will, the student can, And it's an observable, measurable behavior. Something you could find out the next week if it really happened. Okay, let's see what we got, all right?
The students by next week will honestly say that they have been honest on all homework and tests.
Okay. Self-reporting, the student is going to report, the student will report that he has been honest on all of his tests, okay? Somebody else got one.
I had similar to that, but mine was too broad, I think.
Okay.
The student will stop lying at a young age. I think that's pretty.
Well, let's put the word. The student will tell the truth. Let's make it in the positive. The student will tell the truth.
Okay.
Maybe we could even say, when challenged with a situation that tempts him to be dishonest, the student will tell the truth.
Okay.
And then next week you can say, anybody have a circumstance in which you were tempted to be dishonest this week? Well, yeah. What'd you do?
All right.
Student will tell the truth.
So you take something that sounds negative and you flip it around and make it sound a lot more better for the audience.
Well, it's
Okay.
It's better in an objective to be something that he will do, not
Right.
rather than what he will not do.
Okay.
I'm not saying it's always the case, but it's probably better.
Sometimes.
Anybody else got one? Well, we make up a lot. The student will report others who cheat on exams. Okay? I'm expecting all of you to do that now, right? The student will, there are various circumstances in which you could put this. The student will, let's talk about maybe the student on a job. The student will act truthfully on his job in accurately representing the product he is selling. Maybe you've got students who are doing that. Maybe you want to talk about some other Christian trait. The student will show good sportsmanship, both on the playing field and in the stands. The student will show good sportsmanship. Is sportsmanship a Christian quality?
Yes.
Yeah, sure. So you're working on stating things the student can do in terms that you could really observe and find out, did they do it or not? Now, it's sometimes, it's easier to have things that deal with listing and giving tests and things like that, but some of the objectives we're working on, aren't measured that way. You could say, given a set of situations in which one must determine what is the honest thing to do, the student will always choose the honest one. So you give him 10 things and ask him multiple choice, which one of these things, which is the right way to handle this. You find coins in the drink machine. What's the honest thing to do? You take them, you look around and see who left them. Do you turn them into the owner? What do you do? Well, that's not a real easy answer, is it?
If the machine is out there in the sports field,
in the middle of nowhere,
nobody there.
Sure, well, you can't find anybody. You find, so you can create circumstances in which people have to decide what's honest and say, give them a test to see if they can choose the honest one in each one of those situations. So there are various ways of going about it, but you're trying to use words that are specific and verbs that call for what the student can do, Let's take a preschool one. a preschool objective. The student can sing from memory, Jesus loves the little children. Okay? Is that a specific objective? Yeah, you can do it, okay. You want them all to be able to sing that? The student can recite John 3:16. Can recite from memory John 3:16. When asked what is the greatest book in the world, the student can point to the Bible. That'd be really low level with it. But you got the feel for these? Yes. See? Adult class. The student can identify the chapter in Acts in which the major events took place. So you ask him, what chapter did tell us about the story of Pentecost? What chapter tells about the conversion of Cornelius? So that would be an objective. Based on the story of Simon the sorcerer, the student can explain God's second law of pardon. You know what I mean, God's second law of pardon. You know, what does a Christian do after a Christian sins? He repents and prays. You know, so that comes out of the story of Simon the sorcerer. So based on the story of Simon the sorcerer, the student can explain. Now, how would you find out if they can do it? Well, okay, next Sunday morning, you give them a test, like I talked about the other day, or next Sunday morning, you ask for oral responses from the class. You know, the various ways of doing that. Why don't our people in adult classes learn more?
You're not required to learn.
We don't ever tell them we want to learn anything, do we? Have we ever given them a single objective and said, here's what we want you to do when this class is over? Very, very rarely. Very, very rarely. So, they don't memorize the scripture. They don't. I'm not saying they don't learn anything, okay? I'm sure they do. But they'd learn a lot more if they knew exactly what the target was. Here's what I mean by that. Hold on to your thought. Okay. Here's what I mean by that. What if you had a basketball game and there were no goals to shoot at? Mm-hmm. You know, the guy dribbles around and they pass a little bit. Nobody ever shoots. Why? No goals. What did we learn? No goals. No goals. So we would do a lot better with our classes if we had some specific goals. The elders, in my opinion, ought to sit down or have somebody that they're working with sit down and make a list of doctrinal points we'd like everybody to be clear on. Baptism is for remission of sins. Okay. Can everybody in your congregation explain that? Women are to keep silent in the service. Can they all explain that? Jesus, that they can explain the reasons why we believe Jesus rose from the dead. Okay. Paul said that's pretty important, didn't he?
Then after they set those down, we could base our adult class on their
Of
goals.
course. Then after you got that list, then you can say, okay, let's design a curriculum that'll do this. But getting the objectives clarified is a very crucial part of this whole thing. And we've done very little of that in our churches. Now, when you buy somebody else's stuff that they've made, they probably have some objectives. Maybe they have this kind, maybe they don't. They may be good ones. They probably don't include all the things we think ought to be taught. See, that's the problem with using the Beth Moore stuff and all this other stuff, is that, you know who Beth Moore is? She's a denominational woman who's prepared lots of study guides for women's classes that are used in churches of Christ all over the world. And they're pretty good. But they don't teach a lot of stuff that we ought to be taught, and they teach a little bit that shouldn't be taught. Mm-hmm. And so it's a...
what do you think about the Warren books, or are they kind of the same way, do you think?
The what?
What was this? Is it Philip Warren? Is his name?
Oh,
no, Ralph Warren. I can't remember his first name, but purpose-driven.
Oh,
Rick
Warren.
Yeah.
Rick Warren. Well, same thing.
Same thing.
You know,
yeah.
I've read Purpose-Driven Life, and it's got good ideas in it. But it's, you know, if that's the only diet you get,
yeah,
you know, then what are you gonna do?
Yeah.
Your point is, if it's not the needs of our congregation that our elders have found, it's not helping us.
That's right. So we need to be more specific about what we want our Bible class to do, our total Bible classes to do, and then design a curriculum that'll do that.
Did you know what that Rick Warren does there in Los Angeles at his church, Saddleback? There was a lady who attended church where I used to preach, and she would secretly, from time to time, go to this meeting.
Yes.
Eventually, she told me. And at this meeting, it is so huge. Saddleback Church
Oh,
is so
I know,
huge.
sure.
They have a facility that you can worship God and listen to rock and roll music. Facility where you can have coffee and worship God.
Yeah.
Facility where you can have Hawaiian dancing and worship God.
Oh my goodness.
These are some of the things. And not so long ago, recently was interviewed by Larry King, and he stands on he stands on homosexuality and the gay movement. He said, "I have never condemned them."
Yeah, sure.
He's a hypocrite.
One of my questions, you mentioned about objectives in the class. I really think you could adapt some things in the classroom that you're doing in this classroom, just like with the expository. If you take Hebrews 10:25 and ask the class, give me 3 points, what you think that we should know from this passage.
That's right, of course.
And write them down.
Of course.
And then we're going to discuss them.
Talk about it, of course. Sure. Get them to dig in with you.
Right.
But see, that goes to learning paths. You see what you've just done is describe a learning path.
Okay.
See, that's not an objective, that's how you reach an objective.
Oh, okay.
See?
Okay.
Now, well, one way to move in this direction, you know, you're not going to all of a sudden go from what we're doing to doing this to perfection in 1 week. The way of doing this would be to say, okay, our practice in the adult classes has been to study different books of the Bible. Okay. Let's make this list, and then let's say, okay, in which book of the Bible are we going to study about the atonement? And give a really good lesson on it. In which book are we going to study about baptism? And be sure we get a really good coverage when we study Acts. We're going to really emphasize baptism when we study Acts. In which book are we going to study about the Holy Spirit? Which book are we going to study about instrumental music and singing? In which book, you know, the guy who teaches Ephesians is going to come across Ephesians 5:19 and say, well, the guy who taught Colossians probably covered that. I don't need to do it. See, and you don't have any system for that. But if you say, okay, the guy that teaches Ephesians, when he gets to Ephesians 5:19, he's going to stop and spend some time on the question of singing and worship. Okay? That's part of his assignment, to get people to where they can explain why we sing and do not use instruments. That's the objective. They can explain that.
You know, one of the questions that we were asked, we just decided to do something different the other day, was we let people ask questions they want to know answers to, and that's what we're going to use for our Bible classes. One of the questions we were asked was how to do a personal Bible study. I've had like 4 women ask me that here. That would be a good way. is every day sit down with scripture and try to do an expository, try to figure out the topic and the main points of that scripture. That'd be a good Bible study.
Pay me later.
Let me,
And then you pay the staff.
let me offer you something on that. You remember that thing where I showed the pictures and went through them real quick a while ago? If you wanted, which I think is a really good way to tell somebody how to become a Christian. My wife uses that in the prisons all the time. It's been used in lots of places around. I'll tell you where you can find that lesson if you're interested in it. Go to www.oc.edu. www.oc.edu/faculty/Stafford.north/PE.
Physical education.
Oh, that's for
Person language.
I used to teach tennis.
Oh,
Would you believe that? But not in a long while. I can't get.
Was that before or after mountain climbing?
Well, that was a long time before. My shoulders would take it. They wouldn't take it anymore. That has a series of 17 lessons, one of which is on God's eternal plan. So you click on that lesson, and you would get that lesson with the pictures and everything on it. You can also, I'll tell you where else you can get it. You can go to www.ebiblestudy.org, www.ebiblestudy.org, and go to the lessons on sharing your faith, and it'll be one of the lessons on sharing your faith on ebiblestudy.org.
Was that what you invented?
I'm sorry?
Did you invent this method?
Yeah. Well, no, I got it in the Bible.
You invented the pictures.
The pictures are something that I've worked out.
And do you present it as a PowerPoint when you teach people?
No. I'm doing one-on-one, I don't.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so simple. I've sat down on the airplane, riding with somebody and just pull out a blank sheet of paper and go through it, or it does a lot of things that I think are really interesting. One of the tough things to do in studying with somebody is to get them to admit they're lost. You don't want to come out and say you're going to hell. But if you use this method, it starts out with God and man in fellowship, okay? That's how Adam and Eve started out. That's how I started out. How you started out. We all started in fellowship with God. Then you come down here, we chose sin. Adam and Eve did, and look what it did to them. We all have. And look what it's done. It separated us from God. Well, okay, now you've made the point, and he what can he say? I mean, everybody's in that boat. It's not just him, it's everybody. Now, what do we do to get out of it? See? And then you come to Jesus made that possible and so on. But my wife uses it every week in teaching in the prison.
Can we make this our own?
Sure. Whatever you want to with it. It is not copyrighted. But I think it's simple. People I've taught my grandkids to do it when they were 5 years old, They can draw the pictures and explain what it means. So I think, high school kids, and this works for all. So I think that's a good, by the way, while I'm doing this, let me give you my email address so that you can email me your tests and other things while we're sort of talking about stuff like this. My email address is stafford.north@oc.edu. I'm going to give you a take-home final They'll be in printed form, but you can just type out the question and give your answer, and type out the question, give your answer, and then email it to me.
OC.edu, right?
Yeah, oc.edu, stafford.north@oc.edu. You're going to send me you're supposed to do a PowerPoint on the lesson you do tomorrow. You're supposed to do a PowerPoint on it when you get home. And you email me the PowerPoint, okay? And there may be other reasons you want. I mean, you're going to email me some stuff about your work over in South Africa and whatever. The man that I mentioned on our faculty who's from South Africa, let me give you his email. ALAN, Alan, ALAN.Martin, MARTIN, @oc.edu. He is on our faculty, teaches family and counseling and stuff like that, and has been a preacher and is, works as the outreach minister at the Edmond congregation. I think if you were to tell him that I will remember to mention about you to him, but you might tell him that you were in my class and you're going to South Africa, and I thought he'd be interested in that, whatever it's.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, let's see. We were talking about objectives. If you will go to this site I gave you a while ago, www.ebobstudy.org, you can find on there about 15 sets of Bible lessons. Yeah, he's there. Okay, read that list.
1 Corinthians, 1 Peter, Acts, choices that determine destiny, Christian evidences, Christian home builders, Daniel, Ephesians, holiness, studies in Leviticus, leadership training, make your worship pleasing to God, parables of Jesus, Philippians, Revelation, 2, sharing your faith classes, adult and high school, 3, story of the New Testament, Old Testament, adult, high school, understanding Scripture.
Now, if you'll go there and go to the one on sharing your faith,
High school or adult?
Either one, you'll see 13 lessons, and at the beginning of each lesson will be a set of objectives. I mean, if you want to see some objectives in operation, in other words, you want to say, well, what would it look like in a real class? Of course, you've got the syllabus for our class, but if you want to see some others, all of those will have that same approach except the one on church leadership, which is, okay. See, here it starts out.
You can take it around.
I'm going to give you a copy of a sheet that's like this in a minute, but you see it starts out here with objectives. This is a lesson plan that starts with objectives. What are we going to do? What's the reason for this? What's this class supposed to do? What can they do when it's all over? And I'm going to give you a copy of a thing like this in a minute. But if you want to see how some materials have been prepared after this style, okay, you can go there and find a bunch of them.
All of those are prepared in this style?
All of them prepared in this style, except church leadership. I wrote about maybe a little over a third of those sets I wrote. I wrote the one on church leadership, but it is one I did years and years ago and just copied it and put it on there. So it does not follow that format. It's the one that you're using at Southwest. It's a kind of a men's training.
It's got different stuff like song lead, how to lead singing, how to lead prayers, stuff like that.
The student will be able to lead.
But it is not prepared after that stuff.
Yeah.
But all the others are. So you can get some examples there of material, and you may find there some things you want to use in your curriculum. That are prepared. All of these are prepared by teachers at OC. And we're working on some others this summer. Hope to add some more. this summer. Now, let me see where we are on our time. We had our last break at 3:30, 4:35. Okay, we're about due for a break. We'll take a break here and come back and discuss some other things. So let's take a break till about 5:30. And then we'll come back and